Move the curve. Many things in life exist on a bell curve. If you're unfamiliar with the bell curve, it's depicted in the illustration that accompanies this post. Essentially, a bell curve is a graph charting a distribution along an x-axis and a y-axis. The x being the horizontal measurement and the y being the vertical. The visual depiction of that distribution forms an upside-down U that flares out on the bottom, like a bell. Basically, a bell curve represents a common distribution where most samples fall in the middle of the curve, forming the high arc of the bell. Then there are outliers in either direction. We see a lot of bell curve measurements in education. If we have a reading assessment where the x-axis is performance on the assessment and the y-axis is the number of students, a bell curve is inevitably formed wherein there are a few students to the far left who score well below the average, and there are a few students to the far right well above the average. Most everyone else is somewhere in the middle. That forms the bell. One of the goals in education, at least in terms of performance on assessments, is to move the curve to the right by increasing overall student performance and thus establishing the curve of the bell at a higher average assessment score. A lot of things in our lives can be mapped on bell curves too, and it's up to us to move our personal curves to the right. I try to look at life's challenges as opportunities to move the curve. If I'm putting the degree of challenge on the x-axis and performance during that challenge on the y, I want to keep moving that bell curve to the right. We all need some challenge in our lives to bring out our best performances. If there's no resistance, there's no growth, and our performance remains low, forming the far left of the bell curve. As the resistance grows, so does our performance and growth, at least to a point. We rise to meet challenges, but eventually we hit a critical point where the challenge becomes too great for our current skill set, and our performance declines again, forming the right-hand slope of the curve. I liken the concept to lifting weights. We need appropriate resistance for growth. If we stay on the left side of the curve, we don't grow. It's doing a set of 10 with a weight we could lift 20 times. The resistance isn't enough to incite significant growth. We're taking it too easy. On the flip side, if we reach too far to the right, we're not growing either. If we grab too much weight, our performance declines. We either don't make the lift or we hurt ourselves in the process. We have to hit that sweet spot, that arch on the bell curve that gives us enough resistance to grow without giving us so much resistance that we break. If we do that consistently, the curve moves to the right. We get stronger. Weights that were once challenging become easy, and we become capable of lifting more than we had before. Then we have to adjust. We have to increase our resistance again if we want continued growth. I use lifting as an analogy because it makes sense to me, but other endeavors are the same. Whether we're learning algebra or playing the guitar, we have to push ourselves through challenging practice. We have to push ourselves to the peaks of our current capacities, and maybe even a little beyond, if we want continued growth. It's pretty much the same with most things in life. We have to face challenges to grow. If we don't struggle in life, if we live on the left slope of the curve, we don't grow. Too often that's where we try to live. We seek comfort and ease. We try to avoid pain, and pushing our limits is painful business. We stagnate. But really, we need growth. When we cease to grow, we cease to live. And growth only comes through resistance. We need challenges. Unfortunately, there are times we're hit with so many challenges we find ourselves overwhelmed. We fall down the right side of the bell curve. the struggle becomes too great and our performances drop. In life, that can mean a lot of things. We might shirk responsibilities, lash out at others, or become depressed. But if we continually push through challenges and commit ourselves to being more, we can move our own bell curves to the right. We can grow to face the things that once broke us. We can increase our capacity to endure the trials of life in the same way we grow physically stronger by lifting weights. Of course, we don't always get to choose the challenges we face in life. Life is a messy endeavor, wrought with pain and plight, and sometimes we're hit with challenges that seem beyond our current capacities. We face things we are certain will break us, and sometimes they might. We might be hit with such hardship that we feel we can't move forward. But as long as we're still breathing, we must understand that we can move our curves. We can grow to meet even our greatest challenges. We can use that uncommon pressure to become uncommon. It's not easy, and it's not fast. Moving the curve is about adaptation. We get acclimated to challenges, grow stronger, and move past them. That takes time and effort. It's funny when I look back at the things that used to bother me or things I used to care about. I've written about challenges I've faced before. I was hit with some health problems. I got divorced and had to split time with my children. I don't need to rehash all that here. The point is, I faced some uncommon pressure. I'm not saying anything I faced was any worse than anyone else's trials. Our bell curves are specific to us, and I would not presume to know the depth of any other person's struggles. All I know is those things were uncommon to me. I didn't see them coming, and I wasn't ready for them. At times, it felt overwhelming. I faced physical and emotional pain I hadn't dealt with before, and it put me on the right-hand slope of my personal bell curve. There were times when my personal performance dropped, when I wasn't as strong or as kind or as good as I wanted to be. Maybe I never was. Pain has a way of stripping away all but the heart of things. I began to more deeply understand what was truly important to me, and if nothing else, I suppose I at least understood that I had better get stronger or risk staying in pain forever. Again, it wasn't easy. It was trying to be an attentive father and supportive teacher when I felt sick and tired. It was exercising when my body hurt. It was coming to grips with a failed marriage and only spending half my nights reading my children bedtime stories. It wasn't quick either. Really, it never ends, but my curve has moved. Inconveniences that once bothered me seem silly now. Material or petty or ego-driven things I once cared about seem trivial. My bell curve moved to the right, and I became stronger. Those irritations or annoyances or pains are still there. I've just moved past them. I remember reading a story about Sir Edmund Hillary, who along with Tenzing Norgay became the first climber to officially summit Mount Everest in 1953. I don't know if the story was entirely accurate, but I liked the tale. In short, the story stated there was a celebration for Hillary after one of his attempts to climb Mount Everest had gotten farther than any other person's prior attempt. He hadn't made the peak, but he'd gotten farther than anyone ever had. Still, Hillary was not satisfied. He had not reached his goal. He was not done moving his curve. Supposedly, Hillary was asked to speak at the event, and there was a large picture of the mountain up on the stage. Hillary marched up to the podium, pointed at the picture, and said something like, "You beat me this time, but you're done growing, and I'm not." Again, I don't know if that really happened. I wasn't able to find a great confirmation of that story, and I've seen several variations of that quote. but it makes for a nice image. The mountain was the mountain. It wasn't going to grow, at least not enough to make any difference in Sir Edmund Hillary's life. The obstacle was going to stay the same. It was Hillary who would grow. Some of the things that once challenged me are still there, but they stayed put. I moved. Now, I can look at those things resting idly on the left side of my bell curve with passing amusement because they aren't strong enough to hurt me anymore. That's my point with all of this. A lot of people face a lot worse than me. There's probably someone reading this or listening to this right now who is facing worse than I've ever known. I'm not here to judge anyone's pain or boast about my own journey. I recognize that growth is difficult business. But we all have the ability to learn and change and grow. We just have to view our challenges as the pressure we need. We can take life's uncommon pressure and use it to become uncommon. We can put ourselves amongst those outliers who live the lives they truly want to lead. We just have to move the curve. Thank you.